Nobody's innocent, citizen. We're just here to determine the level of your guilt. Here's your look at the brand new Hiya Toys Exquisite Super Judge Dredd. One of the world's most famous comic book characters, Judge Dredd, has been patrolling the mean streets of Mega City for 45 years, and this dynamic and fully posable figure perfectly captures his iconic look. These hyper-detailed figures feature all new accessories and materials, including interchangeable heads and hands and fabric clothing. There's something exquisite about enforcing the law. Just before, of course, we get a closer look at the new exquisite super version of Judge Dredd, I'd like to thank, if I can, the folks over at Hiya that did provide the sample we could have a look at. The figure is slated to release the second quarter of 2024 for around $104, $105 online. The figure, though, of Dredd is going to stand at about 6 inches in height, or he's going to be about 14.5 centimeters tall. The irony isn't lost on me that one of the earlier looked at exquisite super figures from Hiya just happened to be John Rambo. Both, in fact, were played by Sylvester Stallone if you prefer the original Judge Dredd film, or you prefer, I feel, the superior Dredd film with Karl Urban. Now, when it comes to actually standing the two side by side, even though they are part of the exquisite super line, notably, though, you can see that John Rambo is quite a bit taller than Judge Dredd to the right of him. Like with Rambo, Judge Dredd does come included with a display stand. The display stand out of the packaging, if this is the first time you've encountered one of these, you may look at this and think that it's awfully thick of a stand, isn't it? On the top, though, by the way, it does have Judge Dredd. This can be swapped out if you want to, but it does serve a purpose. Not only is it supposed to be a base for the figure to stand on top of, but you can, in fact, take the lid off, and inside is a bag. The bag then stores all the additional accessories that you don't plan to have displayed with the figure, so there's some nice additional storage, and it keeps all the accessories at bay. If you're like me, that runs out of space very quickly when it comes to other boxes sitting around. Take your figures out, you put them on display, then you're like, well, what am I going to do with all these extra boxes? Sure, it's fine just to put them in storage, but if you down the road decide you want to swap out the accessory on the figure, well, you have to always go back to the storage locker, find where you put the boxes. This just makes things a whole lot easier, just that you keep all the extra accessories inside the box that you don't have displayed with the figure, but the figure is still going to be on top of the display stand. Yes, it is thick, but it's thick for a reason. This, by the way, does, like I said, have the Judge Dredd logo there on the front. It's a little, obviously, raised from the rest of the plastic around it. It does have one peg at the back, so it will already, out of the packaging, be able to accommodate the adjustable neck. If, though, you'd like to have Dredd in more of a place than just on the back like this, he does also have one that has multiple holes. So instead of just the one, he actually has now 9. Obviously, you're just going to take this one off, swap it out with the one that you want to then use. And then not only will the adjustable neck go on the back, but then you can put it in any one of the other additional 8 pieces, 8 sections. Sometimes you may, in fact, want to have it in the middle, or you like to maybe have it in the corner. You have a little bit more options. You have more availability with this additional plate instead. But let's go back to the original one, just because I like the way it actually has the logo there on the front. The adjustable neck does, yes, come included with the figure. It has 4 knuckle joints to it. The unfortunate thing about it, though, is it's awfully long. If you're planning to have Judge Dredd leaping in the air, that's one thing. But I'd like to actually, in fact, cut this almost even by half. Taking only 2 of the 4, we're going to just, any one of these, by the way, you can just remove them. So there's a peg, but any one of these can remove. I'm only going to take 2 of the 4, detach it like that. I'm also as well going to take the waist clip, and that's going to come off too. And that just now plugs onto the end of it. And then you still have, again, adjustability. There's, again, a knuckle there, and then just twists it around like this, and then that's going to plug onto the back. So we're going to, again, take the hole right here, take the provided peg, and that's going to fit into the back like that. The only thing I will say, though, is that this is obviously using clear plastic. The waist clip, I've noticed on Judge Dredd's, is really, really tight. It hasn't happened yet. Knock on plastic. It hasn't happened yet, but the plastic was so tight on this one, I would be really worried that it's going to snap. Like I said, it hasn't happened on any of the Exquisite Supers so far, but I think with the plastic being clear like this, there's always the likelihood of this is way too tight. So just tread cautiously with that. Yeah, I do like the idea that they include the display stand like that. Even though, yeah, it's going to mean that these figures, all the Exquisite Supers, are going to stand a little higher than the rest of your figures on your shelf. But I think it's well worth it. The fact that all the accessories are right there where you need them. Carrying around a small arsenal, Judge Dredd gets packed with a lot of accessories. First, the figure comes included with this day stick. The day stick is a pretty large size baton that he carries with him. It's not even quite a gunmetal grade. It's almost got like a little bit of a brownish tint to it. Now, he already has gripping hands on the ends of his forearms, so it's quite easy, in fact, to get the day stick actually in his hands. It's just a case of... And also, by the way, the plastic on the hands is soft enough, too, that I had no problems at all getting the accessories into them. The figure also as well comes included with his Boeing spray. Kind of wanted to jump right away to the Lawgiver, but the Boeing spray he does come included with has already the aerosol sprayed out like this. Just be careful of this, because obviously this is clear plastic. This would be something that'd be breaking off, but really nice the fact that they include a little accessory like this. One thing I've already done in preparation of that, I've swapped out one of the figure's hands. Let's just move the arm up, like for example here. You can see that he has a trigger firing finger hand, but as well, if you take yourself the Boeing spray, the finger sits perfectly. If I get it in between his thumb and his fingers like this, it fits perfectly just above it, looking as if he's spraying down the nozzle. I like the fact that they included that. It's a little, though, harder to pull off where you get it just right on the end of the figure, but it's something that can be successfully pulled off if you wanted to have the figure displayed that way. I actually, in fact, started the review with him carrying around both his day stick and the Boeing spray. While I get the figure to stand, he's fallen over already a couple of times on me. The figure also comes included with a couple of Lawgivers. The strange thing, though, is only one of them is inside the tray. The other one was sitting around loose. I don't know if by accident they actually packed 2 Lawgivers instead of just the one. Even looking, though, at the descriptions online for this figure, it says 2 pistols. Weren't very clear about the fact they were Lawgivers. He does already come with like a slightly more modern version of the Lawgiver, but then he should have one a little bit more centered around looking like the comic. But yet, I ended up getting 2. Both of them, by the way, do have a little dial there on the top. They look to be identical. I don't think there's anything different around about both of these. Again, if you do end up getting this figure for yourself, which I would definitely recommend, I can't promise whether you're going to be getting accidentally 2 Lawgivers. You really only should be getting the one. He does also, like I said, come with the slightly more modern version of the Lawgiver. And again, these are nicely done. Both of them do have a little bit of that brownish kind of gray plastic to them. There's definitely a lot more detail going into this one, for example. And both of these can fit in his hand. Although, if you're looking to holster him onto his leg, this is the better Lawgiver to go with. Like, for example, if you want to take this one, it's just too big of a gun. There's no way you'd be able to store it on the side of his leg. But easily, though, you can take either one of the Lawgivers. I say either one because, again, I had 2. Fit either one of them, they holster down the side of his leg like that. And his store's pretty good, too. The neat thing also about the Lawgivers, if I can get that actually out of his leg, is that they also come included with blast effects. So if we take this one here, for example, he comes with 2 variations. He has one that's a little bit, I'll just put that down for a second. He comes with one that's a little bit shorter, and he also comes with one that's a little bit longer that you can see does actually have a bullet on the end of the tail. Both are, again, utilizing some clear, translucent orange plastic. And there's also pegs on the ends of these. So if you wanted to take, for example, a Lawgiver, there's a hole on the end of the barrel that you just take the blast effect, the firing effect, and that just plugs onto the end like that. I have, unfortunately, though, knocked this a couple of times. It's ended up onto the floor. I had a hard time really trying to find whereabouts these went to. But there's that effect. Like I said, there's also this effect, too. Which, again, if you like just the idea of the gun firing off an actual bullet, then this is the better one to go with. And, of course, if you want to take as well this Lawgiver, it works the exact same way. It just plugs on the end of the barrel. And, again, you can use also this one as well. Now, if he's firing off at bad guys after a while, the gun's going to have to cool. And coming out from that, emitting will be a little bit of smoke. They've also as well thought that out by giving a little smoke effect. This is now using clear translucent plastic, and that plugs basically just onto the end. There's a little peg right there. It plugs onto the end of the barrel. Fits. Somewhat easy, although, again, I've dropped it a couple of times. Hold on one second. Yes, did I already say I dropped this a couple of times onto the floor? If I haven't, I'll mention it again. Again, there's that little peg on the end. You want to make sure really that you put the smoke effect enough into the end of the barrel. There we go. And you can have, again, like the smoked entrail coming out of this. Likely going to be the way I'm going to be displaying Judge Dredd. I just love the idea that they actually took the time to include something as cool like this. Without accidentally dropping that, let's put that off to the side. Move the guns all out of the way. The figure also comes included with some series of swappable hands. Again, he already has the nozzle spraying finger hand. I've swapped that out. The figure I don't think actually started with closed fists, but we'll obviously look at those first. The hands themselves, again, are all molded here in green plastic. Whether you decide there's mileage to be made with actually displaying the figure with closed fists, I don't think there is. The figure also comes included with gripping hands. So say, for example, you want to have the figure displayed with the day stick. You could obviously use the hands that he has right now, but if you want a better grip around that so he doesn't drop it by accident, he also has some slightly more closed grip hands. And then he also comes included with a hand for holding, for example, the canister, or like if you want to go back to using the bong spray, for example, just basically fits in his hand. It's not as compelling, as interesting without having the figure on the end of the nozzle. And then he also comes included with a specifically dedicated trigger firing finger hand. Wow, that's That was hard to get that all out. That can also, again, be swapped out with the existing hands that he has right now. By the way, to change out the hands, it's fine and good to be talking about these. Just hold on to his forearm and just kind of wiggle the hands off. The plastic, again, for these hands is pretty soft, if you can actually see the way I'm doing it right now. Just, again, pop that off, replace it with the hand that you want to use, plug into the peg. Now, the only thing about this, and I may have even mentioned it when we looked at the John Rambos, is that the pegs are very small. So you want to make sure that you're not forcing these, because once they break, you don't have extra ones to work with. Again, that just plugs in place. Get yourself the lawgiver, and the lawgiver fits right into his hand, just like that. We're going to come back to that, I'm sure, when we get to the final looks of the figure. Just want to show you guys what it looks like to get the weapons into his hands. The last thing that the figure also comes included with probably involves me having to have the figure pretty close to the camera like this, as he does come with 3 interchangeable head sculpts. Did one of those start things with the defaulted head, which, if you are a fan of the original Judge Dredd comic book, loved growing up reading the comics. Never really got the chance to have like the entire run of them, but periodically, if I went to like flea markets, garage sales, I always remember there was a gentleman down the street, a slightly older fellow, was selling a whole bunch of comics. Sergeant Rock, I think, was one of them, and Judge Dredd. He had probably like 3 or 4 issues, and he was selling them next to nothing, probably like 10 cents a piece. Picked up a couple of those, and that's basically my introduction to Judge Dredd. Just loved the character ever since. So he has sort of more of a neutral expression on his face. He's got those trademark lightning bolts there across the front of his visor of his helmet. And then he also comes with a couple of other heads as well. If you want a more grimaced face with exposed teeth, he also comes with that as well. Or if you prefer to have Judge Dredd screaming, telling someone to obey the law, for example, he also has this head as well. I think really, of the 3, I either like this one or probably would end up defaulting to maybe this head sculpt instead. And again, changing out the heads, you just want to kind of hold onto his torso, pop the head off, replace with the head that you want to use. And changing the heads was pretty easy, although putting the head back on, you had a little bit more of a harder time. You may have already noticed, though, and I haven't done it as much with this head sculpt just because I was kind of using the one that was coming out of the packaging with, but the size of the holes is obviously smaller than the pegs themselves. So it will, in fact, involve a little bit of pressure, which, again, I haven't done it nearly enough on this head sculpt. A little bit more pressure to get the head actually in place. Maybe what we'll do for right now, at least, we'll put back on the regular head sculpt. Probably going to be coming back to that. I think I may even have to heat that up a little bit more just to get the hole on the plastic a little bit softer. Anyways, I'm going to move that off to the side. I'm sure the other question I'm sure you guys are probably asking is, can you see Judge Dredd's eyes? Well, if you are more faithful to the Dredd movie starring Urban, then you know Judge Dredd never takes off his helmet. If you, though, were a fan of Sylvester Stallone's Judge Dredd, well, he just frequently took off his helmet. Even though you can't quite make it out, there is no eyes underneath that. So if you tried to pry the plastic off, try to take off the helmet, you basically be left behind with basically Judge Dredd, I'm sure, with only his head starting right around here and no eyes whatsoever. Good head sculpt, though, on the figure. For the rest of the figure, here's one problem I have with him, is that they're using a kind of artificial, kind of synthetic, I don't know if you would call it a rubber material. It's not quite leather. It's kind of more like a vinyl material. And they're using it for the basic body of his build. So but underneath that, basically, he would have the articulation in the body. But then they would have stretched across a fabric suit over top of it and then have a big zipper, basically zipping everything over top of it. The thing about it, though, is with the material that they're using, right now, obviously, I'm not having any problems because the figure is brand new. My concern, though, is over time, if this will start to split, especially, for example, if you've got the arms out like this. If you ever had, say, for example, larger 6-scale figures, then you probably already know this. Some figures over time, depending on how you have them posed, will start to split. Usually it's right around the armpit, for example. Sometimes it's always around the legs if you have the legs split like this. Sometimes it's even in creases. It hasn't happened yet, and obviously I have to tell you guys, a brand new figure like this isn't going to give you any problems, but I just think that down the road, long-term plans, is a material like this being used going to give us complications. Like when we looked at Rambo, for example, Rambo isn't going to have that problem because he's got fabric clothing. Unless you have a moth issue, which luckily I don't. But if you have moths, perhaps, they could eat away at the fabric over time. But this is just a material that over time I would imagine would start to probably degrade or flake. Again, it hasn't happened yet. With the way that the figure looks right now, he looks fantastic. He obviously has the big eagle shoulder pad on the one side and an equally large barrel-shaped shoulder pad on the other. These seem to be attached by, I'm guessing, glue. They look like they're you can see it right there. There's a little peg on the inside where basically they're attaching it to the shoulder section. So because of that, yeah, there's a little bit of posability. You can move these back and forth. The thing that I thought was clever, though, is his Judge Dredd badge. Not only is attached to a chain to a zipper, but it's also magnetized. So you can see there's a magnet on the back. They haven't really done the greatest of jobs of hiding the magnet, but it's not that something you'd ever really see unless you're just doing what I'm doing right now. And then there's a magnet basically embedded into his body. You just take the magnet and fit it onto his body. You never have to worry about glue. You never have to worry about a peg. You never have to worry about having problems. So that's just going to fit back on there. Of course, he's got the green gloves. He's got green elbow pads. These are attached, by the way, with like an elastic strap. He's also got his belt there on the front, really nicely painted there with the eagle belt buckle and many different pockets there all around the body. And of course, he's got those big clunky boots as well. The way that they've attached the knee pads is in fact the exact same way they attach the elbow pads, with basically just an elastic strap. Over time, I'm sure, again, that could probably start to grade. I just don't want to be continuing to point out the problems with a figure down the road. But again, I just feel like a material like this, vinyl, maybe could be something that would start to split over time. Now, for the figure's articulation, if we've already looked at Rambo, you already know by now the kind of level of articulation that they managed to put into the Exquisite Super figures. As I'm doing this, I'm currently rotating Judge Dredd's head all the way around so you guys can see. Head rotates very easily. Goes up and down quite good as well. You can also move it back and forth. In addition, though, to the ball joint, he also has a secondary one. You probably can't see it. It's behind the collar. He's got a second ball joint that allows freedom to move his head back and forth this way as well. So he basically gets the benefit of now two ball joints, one here in the head, one here down below in the neck. Now, the upper torso is going to be on a ball joint, so that rotates all the way around. The figure would still have a retaining waist swivel, although it's a little harder to kind of gain access to that. Shoulders move freely out, and when it comes to moving the shoulders out, I can get them as far back as about there, about 45 degrees. Anything after that, you can kind of start to feel that things get pretty tight right around the elbows or right around the armpit area. The arms move forward, and they again move back. There's a swivel there at the bicep. I want to say thigh, at the bicep. Figure does have a double hinge on the elbow, and the hands do rotate all the way around. For the legs, again, the legs split, but again, that's about as far as I'm willing to split the legs. Anything after that, you can kind of feel like the seam is starting to get really tight. Legs go forward, legs go back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh, double hinge once again on the knees, and decent levels of articulation on the ankle. The ankle moves up and down this way. You can also rock it back and forth. And again, the figure doesn't have pegals on the undersides of his feet. I don't think he really necessarily needs it either, because he always has the benefit of that really cool display stand. I really like Judge Dredd. And again, like what we've been seeing so far with the Exquisite Super Series, as I bring back in John Rambo, one of the 3 Rambos we've looked at lately here on this channel, they also have advertised a RoboCop Exquisite Super, which I'm super excited for as well. Yeah, I really am liking what Hiya is doing here with this new line of figures. They're bigger than obviously the Exquisite Minis that we've been looking at for over the years. And even though the figures are larger, they still manage to pack the same level of posability and the level of accessories that the figures come included with. I still don't know why, for example, that Judge Dredd and mine at least came included with 2 versions of the Lawgiver. Well, 2 exact copies of the Lawgiver. Literally, one was just on the bottom of the tray, so I don't know if maybe by accident they just threw an extra one in there. So you get, again, 2 Lawgivers, you get the Day Stick, you get the Boeing Spray, which is, again, a fun little nod to the original comics. Yeah, I love the figure quite a lot. The only thing, again, I'm worried about is just the material that they ended up using. Now, they could have maybe taken a page from John Rambo and used a fabric suit rather than something that, like a vinyl, because vinyl over time would maybe split, depending on, of course, the conditions of where you collect and have your figures displayed. May not always be the problem, but it would be something I would certainly be worried with over time. But as it is right now, I certainly do like what they've done here with Judge Dredd, and I can only hope that we might get other future judges in upcoming releases. Jumping now over to the turntable, his Day Stick in one hand, the Lawgiver Mark I in the other. Judge Dredd not only has the accessories that you see right now, but also as well a Lawgiver Mark II, some firing effects that can attach onto the nozzles of either one of those guns, a smoke entrail, which is one of by far my favorite things that come packed along with the figure, and the Boeing Spray as well. The Boeing Spray, or is it Boeing Spray? One of the nods to the original comics from 2000s AD. A nice little nod to, again, those comic pages. I'm glad to see that they included things like that. He also has, on top of that, 3 interchangeable head sculpts. With a little bit of softening up the plastic and a little bit of persuasion, I was able to get more the angst face on his neck instead of the one that we started with. Probably either going to go with this one, displaying it on my shelf, or just the neutral expression. But he also has as well the screaming face, which is again all nicely sculpted. None of them, though, with visible eyes. If you're a fan of the original comics, you know Judge Dredd never takes off his helmet. For his costume, though, while I am a little bit concerned of the material that they've used, and it's not just, though, me finding fault with what Hiya is doing here. Any company that decides that they want to use vinyl looks good for right now, but I would worry that over time that vinyl would start to split. If you have a figure like this, for example, displayed always on your shelf with high levels of humidity in your collection room, then the arms are always going to be in a pose like this, that there may be starting to split, some developing areas in the armpits, around the areas of the legs, anything that has an extreme bend, even in the elbows there as well. I mean, for me at least, when it comes to 6-scale figures, and speaking only from that, because those are the figures that tend to have, like the artificial or like the vinyl materials, faux leather material, for example. I've never had any problems with my figures, yet I certainly read horror stories of people online that have had their figure materials split, crack, peel. Again, it hasn't happened yet for this figure, and I certainly hope it doesn't happen down the road either, because that's a nice-looking Judge Dredd. Like I said, this guy is slated to release the, second quarter of 2024, with the price point asking of about $104.99. That's most of the prices, at least what the online sites are currently got the pre-order set up for. So he's about the same price, about the same as the John Rambos we looked at before. For $105, I think you're getting a decent-looking Judge Dredd with a whole ton of accessories. Let's hope that down the road, while we're still speaking of John Rambos, Sylvester Stallone, there was obviously the Judge Dredd version of him. Kind of be interested to see what they could do with an exquisite super version of the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd. Who else would be interested in that? Let me know down below in the comment section. Big thank you once again to the folks over at Hiya that did provide this sample of the brand new exquisite super Judge Dredd comic version figure. I say comic version because, again, like, maybe fingers crossed we might get a movie version down the road, or even Carl Urban's version of Judge Dredd. Yes. If you guys did enjoy this video, why not throw it a like? If you guys want to stick around for more and you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below, amigos, and also as well turn on the bell notification. There's going to be more videos coming your way, more Hiya stuff also coming your way, so make sure you're coming back here on a regular basis. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.